Welcome into 504 and more. And today on the show, I'm so glad to have NBA on ESPN reporter Andrew Lopez, formerly known to me and all the Holy Cross boys as Coach Lopez. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. It's very weird to me seeing a bunch of you guys, grown up now, and I know it's got to happen, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens over time. But there was a couple guys in the chat. I was hosting on 104.5 the other day, and there was Matthew Chauvin was in the chat talking about me, and I've run into at least two other students in like my neighborhood area in like the last week and a half. So it's still very weird to me for a lot of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's really inspiring to see where you came from and where you're at now. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and do this. So let's just go ahead. Let's jump right into it. But before we get to all the Pelicans stuff that we would want to talk about, I want to go ahead and just get your take on everything that's going on with the NBA playoffs right now, because it's so exciting to see everything that's going on. And I just want to get your take on some of your favorite things that you're seeing right now.
No, man, this has been great. I mean, right now we're in the middle of the conference finals, and the thing about that is, it's all fresh faces. That our champion, no matter what, is either going to be a first time champion if it's Phoenix or LA, or first time since '71 for the Bucks, or '59 or 58 for for the Hawks. So you're going to get a fresh champion. I mean, you're looking at either Giannis, Trae Young, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Paul George. One of those five guys is going to win, or maybe two if Chris Paul and Devin Booker do it. One of those guys will end up winning, their first NBA championship. And obviously for New Orleans field folks, maybe a little bit of rooting interest there with Monty and Chris Paul in Phoenix, or for more recent fans, definitely with Drew in Milwaukee with the Bucks. So it's been fun. I know they're setting ratings records left and right. It's a situation where you definitely see the kind of the new faces definitely rising. I know there was a fear for some people seeing, LA. I mean, the Lakers, obviously LA is still in it. The Lakers get knocked out in Boston, all these big markets, but I don't think there's big markets in the end. There's not a small market, big market. It's destination or not destination. I mean, Miami's always going to be a destination. The Lakers are going to be a destination. The Clippers never were, even though they were in LA. So that really didn't matter to them. Kind of same thing flipping to the Knicks, right? Like it didn't matter for what the Knicks were, despite them being in New York City for a long time. So to me, I think it's just a huge thing for the NBA to kind of start establishing themselves here in these new markets.
And I mean, it's been a lot of fun. Trae Young, he looked absolutely incredible last night. But the night prior, we had the NBA draft lottery, and all the Pelicans fans, we were hoping to sneak into that top four and get away from that 10th pick. But inevitably, the 10th pick is where we landed. And now looking into pre-draft, do you think that it's more likely that we end up shipping the pick off in some form of a package, or do you think it would be more likely that we stay home and then take a guy like Corey Kispert, who's being rumored for that 10th spot?
Yeah, I very much like the idea of them taking Corey Kispert. I think it's one of the few things me and Will Guillory have agreed on. Not really, maybe we'll agree on a lot of things, but me and Will are on the same page. Um, I just now, Woj literally just tweeted that Jason Kidd is a strong front runner to be the head coach of the.
See, and
Pelicans.
that was another one of my questions I was gonna have just
we
ready to
could
go.
we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Going back to the 10th pick, I like Corey Kispert. I like them being able to add shooting, but I really think it's 50-50 right now whether or not the Pels keep that pick. I think they could do a lot of different things with it. They could end up, packaging that I don't think they package it for more picks in this draft, but could be something where they attach it to somebody or they send it out to try to get a veteran move, a veteran to come back in. So Griff's got a lot of options, and obviously they have a lot of assets right now to make some things happen because they do need to add a lot of shooting, and maybe you don't just settle with one college senior coming in as your shooter, and you try to maybe get somebody who's a little bit more ready. Even though I think Corey Kispert is probably one of the more ready to play day one guys in the draft this year.
I was just watching a video right before we got on the call of him doing a workout and his stroke, it was looking really nice. And having that form of shooting, it would be really, really helpful to help us propel into an 8 seed or get into some form of playoff contention. But let's just go ahead. Let's talk about the coaching search. You just brought up that Jason Kidd, he's the front runner in Dallas right now. Rick Carlisle, he's off to Indiana, and then Boston, they just got Udoka, if
Yeah.
I believe. Yep. So I mean, there's options all over. And right now, there's, I mean, people in house like Fred Vincent and Teaspoon that are being mentioned in the talks, and they also have people that are outside the organization like Chauncey Billups that are being talked. So what's your stance on the entire coaching search that's going on right now and the likelihood of some of these candidates being thrown around?
Let's start with Teresa Weatherspoon. Teaspoon is probably one of the most beloved, if not the most beloved person in that building right now. I mean, everybody loves her. Griff kind of shot it down the day we spoke with him. I just think Teaspoon is a little too raw on the NBA side for them to decide to just throw it to her right now. But I 100% see her sticking around. I do think she'll end up being. Griff mentioned her, asking her to be the summer league coach, so that's going to be something that she does this year. So they really really like her. I just don't think it'll be her for this spot. I could see Fred Vincent possibly being in that mix. Uh, Obviously Fred is a guy who gets a lot of people talking about him because of what he's done with people's shots over the years, especially Lonzo. Brandon Ingram gave him a lot of credit. We going back to what he did with Tyreek and AD. He's helped a lot of people get their numbers up, and especially Lonzo. Lonzo's given him credit time and time again. But he's also been, he's been doing scouts for a couple of years. He's, was I don't want to call him like necessarily the offensive coordinator, but he played a big role in the offense that ended up finishing still 11th in the league last year, despite the spacing issues, and everything that happened with Z. So he is definitely a candidate. Charles Lee from Milwaukee is certainly a candidate. They are obviously still in the conference finals, so maybe a face-to-face interview is not going to be right away with him. And then on the flip side of that, you also have, I think, Jacques Vaughn from the Brooklyn Nets is definitely still in the mix. You mentioned Chauncey Billups could get in the mix if he doesn't get the Portland job. So I think a lot of this comes from they went through this process last year, so they were able to get a little bit in depth. However, because of everything with the COVID restrictions last year, there was you couldn't really meet with people face to face, and it kind of slowed things down a little bit. So I think what you'll see is they'll lean on a little bit of that from last year. But while they try to, figure out who the right person is for the job this year, because they got to get this one right after they did not get the last one right.
Yeah, and the past 2 years, I mean, we haven't had the best coaching with Gentry and then followed by Van Gundy. So around the league with this search going on, what's the general consensus about taking the Pelicans job in general, or how coaches feel about even looking into that opportunity?
It's still, I mean, obviously jobs are filling up literally right now, possibly, on our, as we're doing this with Jay Kidd there. But to me, I think what you're going to see is it's still a chance to coach Z. It's still a chance to coach BI. They're going to look, I think, at a younger coach. Than going with, they went from the 60-year-old Alvin to 61-year-old Stan Van Gundy. They're probably going to go to younger coach this time that, somebody who can maybe relate to the players a little bit. Maybe go with a former player. That obviously fits in with Jacques or Chauncey if they were going to go that way. So to me, it's those would be kind of the names I think you're looking at, and I think around the league, people still see it as a good job. But I mean, I think when we did our ranking of it on ESPN, I think Kevin Pelton did it for us. The Pels had the second highest ranked job, right behind the Boston job. I think with Dallas coming in, Dallas probably would have jumped that because you get Luka and a more probably playoff ready made team. But I still think there's it's not just they're not going to be begging anybody to take this job. I'll put it that way.
So moving on, I want to go more into the off season a little bit and talk about some of our bigger players that we need to look into with contract extensions coming up. And also, you also have Lonzo Ball entering restricted free agency this offseason. He's getting looked at by teams like the Knicks, teams like the Bulls. What's the likelihood that we retain Lonzo, knowing that his price tag is going to be somewhere in the $20 million range?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key thing is where his price tag falls. If it gets into that 20 million range, I don't really see him being back. If it comes in lower than that, which I think is also possible, I think that increases the chance of him being a Pelican moving forward. It's also very possible that they could end up uh, trying to move him in a sign and trade type situation, because not a lot of teams have cap space because of COVID and the cap not going up the way that they thought. A lot of teams who thought they were going to have cap do not have cap space right now. So maybe a team. I'm not going to throw any names out there, but there could be teams who show up and be like, "Hey, we want him, but we can't outright afford him. Okay, well, let's sign and trade and make this deal, and we'll try to get it done." So his number is going to be crucial, I think, to whether or not that's what he does. Obviously, he went to Clutch, so they're going to try and get him the best deal. But maybe he ends up taking a 4-year deal that gives him more guaranteed money, where as opposed to a shorter term deal. Everything's kind of up in the air right now, but that number is going to be very, very crucial for whether or not he comes back as a Pel.
Another guy that's in the air right now about returning to the Pels for next season is Josh Hart. I saw that report that he's looking for a change of scenery. So I know the Pelicans, they love having his defensive tenacity and his shooting on the squad. So what's the likelihood that Josh Hart is out of the door and gets that change of scenery he desires?
Again, that's going to come down to a number issue, and I think where you look at Josh Hart, I think he's looking to make some money this off season. Remember, he was a 4-year guy. He was a long, he's a little bit older than some of these other players right now. And what I think you'll see is if somebody's willing to give him a good number, then he can go for it. Now, also, he could be a guy who maybe he takes the MLE somewhere and tries to play for a contender. I could see him doing that as well. I could also see maybe the reason he wanted a change of scenery, according to that report, maybe that's been taken care of, because Stan's not going to be back next year, so that could also factor in. So there could be maybe a change of heart. Huh? Maybe he could have had a change of heart on that, but again, I think it's all going to come down to the number and what the Pels feel comfortable with compared to what Josh thinks he can go get.
The last guy I'm going to have to cover, I mean, he was in that Lakers package with both Hart and Lonzo. You talked about him earlier today on ESPN BR, and that has to be Brandon Ingram, and how his struggles from last season defensively and also closing out games, it really hindered the Pelicans making that stretch to try and capture that 8th seed. So when you look into this offseason, he also said that he wants to make strides to improve on the defensive end and being able to improve his mid-range and his 3-point game. So when you look at Brandon Ingram, do you think these issues that were brought up from last season were mainly because of Van Gundy? Because the year prior with Gentry, he makes that all-star appearance, most improved player, and then it just dips down whenever Van Gundy comes in the door, doesn't play him alongside Zion as much. So what do you think it's going to take for Brandon Ingram to get comfortable in the system again and get back to where he once was with Alvin Gentry?
So let's look at his numbers from the Alvin Gentry year to Stan Van Gundy. Played 62 games under Alvin, played 61 games under Stan. So a very even number there. So let's go here we go. Each year he averaged 23.8 points. Each year he averaged about the same in blocks. A little bit, he averaged 1 steal even. He was 0.7 before that. His assists went up. His rebounding went down. He was right at about 5 each game. So he's giving you 25, 5, and 5 every night. And that's with playing next to Brandon. I mean, to Z. His shooting numbers were the same. His percentages, he went from 39.1 to 38.1. Free throw percentage jumped up. The biggest thing I think with with Brandon from Alvin to Stan was his scoring numbers went up in the games that he played with Zion. So he had a very similar season. So he had a very similar year than when he was an all-star, but it probably helps that their record was a little bit better at that time. And then he was getting some of that recognition. Obviously, he was named most improved player that year. So the fact that he is averaging 25, 5 and 5, 24, 5 and 5 is really good for the Pels. And I think the key for Brandon is going to be when you look at what he is playing at, he's listed anywhere, I mean, 6'7", 6'9", whatever it is, depending on what NBA stat wants to use that day. But he's listed 190 pounds. He's probably playing a little bit below that. And guys lose, and that's a number you get at the beginning of the year. Most guys lose weight during the season. So for Brandon, I think this is key for him getting better on defense, getting better to be better in fourth quarters, to be better even at the later end of the season. Is if he can put a little bit more weight on and start to get his frame a little bit better. I know it's something he's tried to do in the past. I think again he's going to be focused on working on his body and working on getting a little bit stronger. And I think if he can do those things, you'll see him start to also be able to take the jump or just be a consistent guy who can give you 25, 5 and 5 every night. And I'm pretty sure most teams in the NBA would take a guy who can give them 25, 5 and 5 every night, especially when Z is going to be able to do his thing. So I'm not concerned about B. I think BI is a great tag team partner for Zion. And again, the list of, as I was saying on the radio, the list of guys that I would move for Brandon Ingram is very, very small. And I got a feeling most of those guys are not going to become available this summer. So you build around these two and try to get somebody else to come play with them.
You mentioned BI adding to his frame, and another person who has said right after the season ended that they want to do the same thing is Jackson Hayes. And you saw at the end of the season, he was able to produce a lot better minutes down the stretch and be a very useful role player for the Pelicans. And a lot of the young guys on the team, especially Kyra, especially Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they weren't getting as much usage underneath Stan Van Gundy. Looking into next season, regardless of whatever coach ends up coming in, do you believe that Griffin, he's going to have a bigger say in getting those guys minutes and being able to develop them?
I think he'll be more in line with the coach this time. I don't think he's going to go in and dictate, this guy needs to play X amount, this guy needs to play X amount. But I think the coach who he's going to bring in is going to be more aligned with his philosophies to let's get these young guys minutes. You mentioned Jackson Hayes wanting to get his body better. That was something Jackson actually committed himself to during the season this year. When he got benched for Billy Hernangomez early in the year, Jackson started getting a string of DNPs. So just something he's not very much used to, right? And he committed himself in the weight room. He committed himself to getting better. He committed himself to practice. There was times he would go in there and play 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 before games. Sometimes maybe once or twice he even came and shot after games. I think he ended up getting around 230 in the middle of the year. So for him, it's a sense of trying to figure out his body, of what's that threshold of where do I keep all my speed and athleticism that makes me such a wild player, and where is my line of, all right, I have to gain weight, I have to do this. And so between him, I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker was probably, I think if Nickeil, Lonzo stay healthy in April and May, I think you probably see that as your starting lineup, at least for some part of the latter end of the season, and you shift Bledsoe to the bench. It was just a situation where Nickeil had that great stretch, and then Lonzo comes back that one game. They move Lonzo to the bench. Thank you. They move Lonzo to the bench, and lose Lonzo to the starting lineup. Nickeil goes to the bench for that one game, and in that first game, he was coming off the bench in that real 6-man role. He rolls his ankle, and he's out until the last 5 games of the season. So you were starting to grow there. You were starting to see that upward path for him, at least. It's going to be interesting to see how they play Kyra. Obviously, Kyra will probably get a chance to shine in Summer League. I could see them playing Jackson in Summer League. I don't think Jackson will play his traditional 5 role. I think they'll try to experiment with him a little bit. Obviously, Keel probably won't play summer league because he's going to play for the Canadian national team. I think he's going to be their starting point guard. Upcoming here in July. So there's some intriguing options there, and I think we'll see a little bit more Didi. We'll get a sense of some of these young guys when summer league comes around.
All right, before I go ahead and let you go, we got to address the elephant in the room with, of course, Zion Williamson. The reports coming out that his family is not happy with the direction that the Pelicans are going in right now. So overall, what's your assessment of the situation, and should Pelicans fans be, on their toes thinking of if Zion is potentially out of the door before he signs that rookie extension?
So I know for Pels fans, it's hard because you saw what happened to Chris Paul. Obviously, now that was a special situation. Ownership was in flux, and you could see why he was ready to leave. AD leaves, and now you're like, oh my God, here it happens again. We have another once in a generation kind of guy, and we're gonna blow it again. If you're a Pels fan, here's my thing on Z. That was I'm not going to discredit that report. I mean, there's been whispers about that for a while, but I think the main thing to me is you win and everything is okay. I think that's the biggest piece right now is winning would solve a lot of different things. And if they can string together some wins, and if they can come out and, say they go 48-34 next year and they come away with the 6th seed and they're not even in the play-in turn, you take steps in the right direction and you get the right pieces around him. I think it becomes harder for him to say no to that rookie extension if you are moving in the right direction. To me, that just puts the pressure on the front office, though, to make sure you're going in the right direction.
Well, I appreciate everything so much, especially for all this information that you're throwing on me right now. It's going to be so helpful going into the new year. We're really hopeful for the Pelicans this season. So before we go ahead and get out of here, is there anything you want to say to everybody watching at home?
No, man, look, it's not a one. It's not going to happen all at once. They're not going to turn into a 60-win team, barring some major moves. They're not going to turn into a 60-win team next year. But if you're worried about Z, just they'll win. If they win, everything is going to be a lot easier.
Thank you, Andrew, for your time. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thanks, man.